You have got to be kidding me. Rarely am I surprised by the outright ignorance, the stupidity that is prevalent throughout the mainstream media, but even I was surprised this afternoon after one of you guys emailed me this article from USA Today. Now, you would think with everything that is happening to Deadspin, the media, they would be on their best behavior. You would think with Deadspin being sued into bankruptcy, with the business of mythical racism entering bankruptcy, all the so-called stars in the business of mythical racism, where are they now? Bomani Jones, unemployed. Jamel Hill, barely employed. Tiffany Crosstiver, the bongo sniffer. Hell, her face is on the side of a milk carton. She can't be found. You would think the mainstream media, USA Today, they would come to the realization that following the business practices of woke United Methodists ends in devastation and destruction. Over the last 3 or 4 years, the mainstream media, they have been begging us to give women's basketball a chance. They renamed the women's tournament March Madness. I guess the thinking was when you were scrolling through the guide and saw March Madness, you would tune in thinking it was men's basketball, but once you saw these dynamic female athletes, once you gave them a chance, you would be hooked. Nancy Armour, better known as Captain Doofus of the Starship Enterprise. She is the boss of the Star Trek virgin Mike Freeman at USA Today. Nancy Armour, she has spent her entire media career trying to get women's basketball into the mainstream. In the past 12 months, it finally happened. We finally gave women's basketball a chance. Now, of course, we are not watching the WNBA. No one is watching dump divers pretend to play basketball. When I say we were willing to give women's basketball a chance, I am referring to the professional basketball that young women play at the collegiate level. Even someone like me, who has never really liked women's basketball, hell, I don't really like college basketball, period. I've always preferred the NBA. But even someone like me, I was willing to give women's basketball a chance. Now, you would think Nancy Armour and USA Today would be pleased by this. Mission accomplished. But no! Headline from this past weekend at USA Today. Women's basketball needs faces of the future to be black. What? What the hell does it matter what color their face is? The only people who care about race are the shit fucks in the mainstream media. The rest of us could not care less. This article, it was heavily promoted by Nancy Armour, but it was actually written by someone named Lindsay Schnell. Casey, who in the hell is Lindsay Schnell? She seems like the younger version of Nancy Armour. Nancy, she met Lindsay at Woke Memorial Hospital. My inside sources tell me they were both in the ICU being treated for their white privilege. Here we have two white women subtly shitting on the legacy of Caitlin Clark because she lacks melanin. They cannot wait for Katie Rue Clark to get demoted to the WNBA dump. According to USA Today, Caitlin Clark leaving professional basketball to enter the WNBA dump, that opens up the opportunity for women belonging to marginalized groups to become the next face of women's basketball. Yeah, like it's that easy. Like creating a generational superstar is that easy. So, who is going to be the new face of women's basketball next season? According to USA Today, it's going to be Juju Watkins and Hannah Hidalgo. Two young women that I think most people have never heard of. Now, I am vaguely familiar with Juju Watkins. I have never heard of Hannah Hilda or whatever the fuck. I'm sure they are both lovely young women, probably great basketball players. But that does not mean they are going to be superstars. That doesn't mean they are going to be able to replace Caitlin Clark. Of course, USA Today, they have a logical explanation for their potential failure. America only cares about white players. Oh, really? America only cares about white players in the sport of basketball? Outside of Larry Bird, can you name another mainstream white superstar in basketball? Well, Casey, what about Paige Buchers? What about Sabrina Ionescu? yeah, that's who USA Today used too. They claimed that both of these young women were the only female players marketed in the last few years. Well, let me ask you something. How often have you heard about Paige Buchers this season? I cover the mainstream media for a living. I rarely see her in the headlines. One of the first times this season that I saw Paige on the front page of my newsfeed was when she announced that she was rejecting the minimum wage offered in the WNBA to play one more season of professional basketball at UConn. Most people had never heard of Sabrina Bree until she made that video a few years ago complaining about the substandard conditions at the women's tournament. Oddly enough, a few months later, she left those substandard conditions to live in even worse conditions in the WNBA dump. The premise of this article from USA Today, I can't even call it an article. This was outright propaganda. The premise of this polished turd is that America refuses to give the black players who built women's basketball the proper recognition they deserve. WNBA dump divers are 70% black, and no one recognizes them when they're boarding the Greyhound bus. Their suitcases are mistaken for trash cans, and they get filled with dirty diapers. It's so traumatizing. These women deserve to be approached and asked for autographs. Let me get this straight. You're telling me that black players don't get the recognition they deserve? USA Today, you are telling me with a straight face that the mainstream media ignores black basketball players? The same media that spent an entire year turning Bob Griner into the ultimate victim, the same Bob Griner who tried to sneak Granny's ganja into Russia for her extended vacation with Vlad Puder, you're telling me Bob Griner went unnoticed? What about Dawn Staley? Dawn Staley receives plenty of recognition and attention. What about, I don't know, Angel Reese? Women of all races contributed to building women's basketball. But let me give you some hard truth here. And if you happen to be wearing your woke hat, I would encourage you to remove it immediately. As you guys know, if someone is wearing a woke hat and they get hit with the truth, the side effects can be fatal. I know the mainstream media likes to live in this unrealistic utopia, but KC lives in reality. And the reality is, even though the thousands of women who came before her contributed to building women's basketball, Caitlin Clark is responsible for making it mainstream. Without Caitlin Clark, women's basketball is not a national topic of conversation. Now, Angel Reese deserves credit as well because every superstar needs a sparring partner. Every superstar needs another star of equal caliber to defeat, to compete against, which is why I'm concerned for Caitlin Clark once she enters the WNBA. Right now, the dump, they do not have another star on the level of Caitlin Clark for her to compete against. I have a question though. The media, they're complaining about black players supposedly being overlooked in women's basketball. How come they don't complain about white players being overlooked in the NBA? Remember last year when Nikola Jokic should have won the MVP award in the NBA? The wanker spankers at ESPN cried mythical racism. Kendrick Perkins bitched and complained because a white player was going to be named MVP. What ended up happening? They gave the award to Joel Embiid instead. The mainstream media overlooks white players in the NBA, then they turn around and complain when a white player is the face of women's basketball. Make it make sense. But the ignorance continued from USA Today. According to Lindsay Schnell, the reason black players are overlooked in women's basketball is because of the positions they play. Yeah. Caitlin Clark is only a superstar because she's a guard, she's a playmaker. A'ja Wilson isn't recognized because she's a forward. Oh! A'ja Wilson isn't recognized because she's not a star. LeBron James is a forward too. He doesn't seem to have a problem with recognition. Shaq, Dwight Howard, they were centers. At one time, both were being mentioned as possibly being faces of the NBA. When it comes to star power, Position is meaningless. Travis Kelce, he's one of the biggest stars in the NFL. He's a tight end. His brother was on the offensive line. When someone is a legitimate superstar, the position they're playing is absolutely meaningless. USA Today, they continued with their stupidity by explaining why women's college basketball is so popular and the WNBA can't draw flies to a freshly steamed turd. Women's college basketball is popular because it's accessible. Their games are on Fox and ABC. If America was given the opportunity, they would fall in love with the variety of beards in the WNBA. We have been given the opportunity. There is plenty of access to the WNBA on television. Problem is, we don't want access. There would be a mutiny if they put the WNBA on Fox. You think people are wanting to miss Jeopardy so they can watch missed free throws and airball dunks? This same thing happens every single March. Every year during the month of March, USA Today complains about the lack of recognition given to women's basketball. Now, they had to modify that complaint this year because people are finally paying attention. Now, the new complaint is people aren't paying attention to black players. The good news is, we will not have to deal with this next year because Caitlin Clark will be gone, and once she is gone, women's college basketball will return to irrelevance. Like I said earlier, I am sure Juju and Hannah, whatever the fuck, I am sure they are lovely young women. I'm sure they're great players, but there is a huge difference between being a great player and being an icon. Caitlin Clark is a once-in-a-lifetime superstar. There has never been another star in women's college basketball on the same level as Caitlin Clark. More than likely, there never will be. The NBA has never been able to replace Michael Jordan. Well, Casey, what about LeBron James? What about him? Go look at the ratings. LeBron has never come close to matching the ratings that Michael Jordan drew in the 90s. The PGA, they have never been able to replace Tiger Woods. WWE, they have never been able to replace Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. The point is, there are stars and there are icons. There's lots of people that are stars. Very, very few icons. The media, they think it's going to be easy to replace Caitlin Clark next season, but it just ain't that simple. Caitlin Clark is an icon, and there's just no way to replace her. But give me your thoughts on this. USA Today proves why sports journalism is a dying industry. After years of complaining that women's college basketball is being overlooked, they are now complaining because the biggest star is a white player. This is why the mainstream media is struggling. Do you think it'll be that easy? Will Caitlin Clark be replaced next season? Will women's college basketball be able to remain in the mainstream? You let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. I appreciate your support. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.